"I don't want to be alone tonight," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the streetlights outside. I could hear the tremor in her words, the kind that makes you stop everything and pay attention. It wasn't the first time she had sounded scared, but there was something different this time, a vulnerability I couldn't ignore. Without thinking, I said, "Then I'm staying here." And just like that, the night that was supposed to be ordinary suddenly felt like the start of something I couldn't quite understand. Her eyes flickered up at me, wide and uncertain, and for a moment, it was just the two of us in the dimly lit living room, the rest of the world fading away. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she hugged her knees to her chest, as if the very act of holding herself together wasn't enough. I wanted to ask why she was afraid, what had brought her to this point, but I didn't. I didn't want to push. Sometimes, words just make things worse. The room smelled faintly of tea and something floral, maybe the candle she had lit earlier. And yet, despite the comforting scent, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There was an edge to the night, something unspoken, hovering just beyond the glow of the lamp. I kept glancing toward the windows, half expecting to see movement in the shadows outside. But it was empty. Quiet. Too quiet. She shifted, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders, and I realized that staying wasn't just about offering company. It was about making a choice. I could leave, pretend I didn't hear the fear in her voice, or I could stay and face whatever this night was going to bring. There's something about fear that demands attention, that forces you to act. And for some reason, I couldn't walk away. We sat like that for what felt like hours, neither of us saying much. Just the faint ticking of the clock, the occasional creak of the house settling, and that unshakable feeling that something was coming. I tried to focus on small things, the flicker of the candle, the hum of the heater, but my mind kept wandering to the questions I didn't dare ask. Who, or what, had scared her this badly? And why did it feel like whatever it wasn't just outside? Then, just as I was about to suggest we turn on some lights, a soft sound echoed from the hallway. Barely more than a whisper, but it froze me in place. Her breath caught. My heart thumped so loudly it felt like it could give us away. Whatever it wasn't part of the ordinary night we had expected. And in that moment, I realized that staying might have been the first decision of my life that would change everything. Because sometimes, the thing you choose to protect isn't just someone else. It's yourself, too. And whatever was out there, waiting for us in the dark, was patient. Her name was Emily. I'd known her for years, close enough to understand the quiet patterns of her life, but not close enough to know every secret she kept tucked away. That was part of who she was. Careful, thoughtful, cautious, and sometimes impossibly stubborn. She liked control, liked to feel like she could manage the world around her, which made the tremor in her voice tonight even more unsettling. Because when someone like Emily is scared, you know it isn't casual. We had met in college, thrown together by some random group project, and somehow we never stopped talking. Over the years, we became that rare kind of friends who understood each other without explanation, who could share silence and it still feel like connection. But tonight, the silence felt different. Heavy, threatening, almost. Earlier in the day, Emily had seemed normal, smiling over coffee, complaining about work, joking about her terrible neighbor who played music at all hours. I had thought she was just tired. But something had shifted in the evening, some invisible line that had crossed her calm demeanor into fear. She had texted me, short, urgent, "I don't want to be alone tonight." No explanation. Just those 6 words that carried more weight than any full paragraph could. I hesitated before answering because a part of me wondered if I was overreacting. But when I finally walked through her door, saw her there, curled up like she was bracing against the world, I knew there was no choice. You don't ignore a warning like that. The apartment was small, but cozy, with books stacked on every surface and photographs pinned on corkboards. Moments of a life carefully curated, a life that didn't usually include panic or fear. And yet, tonight, it felt fragile. The walls seemed to close in, and the shadows in the corners stretched longer than they should. Something had seeped into her safe space, something she couldn't manage on her own. I asked her gently what had happened. She shook her head, refusing to speak. I wanted to press, but I also knew that fear isn't something you force out. It has to reveal itself in its own time. So we stayed like that, sitting close, sharing warmth, listening. I kept thinking about all the times she had been the strong one, the the one who helped others navigate their messes. And now, here she was, asking for someone else to step in. And I couldn't leave her. As the night deepened, small things began to feel wrong. The creak of a floorboard that shouldn't have moved, a whisper of movement from the kitchen, even the way the shadows twisted unnaturally near the hallway. My instincts screamed that whatever had unsettled her wasn't imaginary. Something was waiting, watching, patient, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were both about to discover that some fears don't stay hidden. Some fears find a way to reach you, no matter how safe you think you are. I glanced at Emily. Her hand barely brushed mine, a silent plea for reassurance. I wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but deep down, I didn't know if that was true. Because tonight, nothing was as ordinary as it seemed. And in the silence between us, I realized what was coming wasn't just knocking at the door. It was already inside. The first time I noticed it, I almost thought I was imagining things. A shadow moving against the wall, just beyond the reach of the lamp's glow. I froze, convinced it was nothing, but Emily stiffened beside me, and that told me it was real. Her breathing quickened, shallow, like she was trying not to let the fear escape her chest. "Did you see that?" she whispered. I nodded slowly, keeping my voice low. "Yeah." Her hand found mine, gripping tightly. "It's not just me," she said. "It's something else. I can feel it." And that was when the room stopped feeling safe. The ordinary apartment, the place she called home, felt suddenly like a trap. Every noise, every creak of the floor, every flutter of the curtains against the open window seemed to carry a threat. My stomach tightened, a knot of instinct and adrenaline I couldn't shake. I tried to keep calm, to reason with her, but even I felt it. Something was in the air, something watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. Emily's eyes darted toward the hallway, then the kitchen, then back to me. "It's like it knows we're here," she said, voice trembling. I don't understand why." I reached for the lamp, thinking light might chase it away, but the shadows only seemed to stretch further, twisting unnaturally, like dark fingers curling along the walls. My heart pounded as the silence was broken by the faintest sound, a whisper, soft, almost a hiss, coming from somewhere behind the door to the bedroom. "Stay close," I said, even though my voice shook. I wasn't sure if I was comforting her or myself. We moved together, cautious, toward the source, the sense of dread growing with each step. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't leave her. And Emily, she wasn't the type to panic over nothing. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. Then it happened. A knock, soft, deliberate, echoed from the bedroom door. Just one knock, but enough to make both of us jump. I reached for the handle, fingers trembling, heart hammering in my chest. Emily's grip on my arm tightened. "It's coming from inside," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought I locked it. I froze, because in that instant, I realized it wasn't just fear anymore. It wasn't just shadows or imagination. Something, or someone, was in that room. And whatever it was, it knew we were here. And as I slowly turned the knob, a cold wave of dread hit me, and I understood. Tonight, nothing would be ordinary again. I twisted the knob slowly, every muscle in my body taut, every nerve screaming that this was a moment we couldn't undo. Emily stayed right behind me, her hand still gripping my arm like a lifeline. Her breaths came fast and shallow, and I could feel the fear radiating off her in waves, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The door creaked open, and the room inside was empty. Or at least, it looked empty at first glance. The bed was untouched, the curtains swaying lightly in the breeze from the cracked window. But the air felt heavier, charged, like the room itself was holding its breath. I stepped inside, careful, listening for any hint of movement. Emily followed silently, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. That's when I saw it. A faint smear on the wooden floor, almost imperceptible, like someone, or something, had passed through in a hurry. My stomach dropped. I knelt down, heart thundering, trying to convince myself it was something innocent. A spill, a shadow, maybe even a trick of the light. But Emily's voice cut through my thoughts. "Did you see that?" she whispered, pointing toward the closet door. I froze. The closet door was slightly ajar, swinging just a fraction in the draft, but it wasn't the movement that terrified me. It was the shadow that seemed to shift inside, darker than the rest of the room. I wanted to step back, to leave, to tell Emily we should call someone, anyone, but my feet were rooted to the floor. Then I heard it, a soft, almost deliberate shuffle. Not random, not accidental. It came from inside the closet. I glanced at Emily, her face pale, eyes wide, lips pressed together so tightly I thought she might split them. It's in there, she said, barely above a whisper. I swallowed, trying to steady my shaking hands. Stay calm, I said, though the words sounded hollow even to me. We'll see what it is. Nothing's going to. Another sound cut me off, a whisper this time, closer, almost like it was right behind the closet door. And I swear I could hear a voice, soft, low, teasing in a way that made my skin crawl. Emily gasped, clutching my sleeve so hard it left marks. I reached for the door, heart hammering, and stopped just short of touching it. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but I couldn't leave her here. And Emily, she wasn't just afraid. She was terrified in a way that made it impossible to look away, impossible to ignore. The whispering stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence so thick it pressed against my ears. My hand hovered over the closet door, frozen. Emily's breath hitched. I could see the question in her eyes, the same question racing through my own mind. Is this real? Or have we crossed into something we can't escape? Then, just as I was about to pull the door open, a sudden movement in the corner of the room made both of us jump. Something shifted, fast, deliberate, and I realized, with a cold certainty, that whatever was in this apartment was no longer content to stay hidden. And in that moment, I knew we were about to find out the truth. I swung the closet door open, and the room was still empty. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure it would give me away. I stepped inside cautiously, thinking maybe we had imagined it all. But then I saw it, the mirror on the back wall. At first, it looked normal, but as I drew closer, I noticed something impossible. The reflection wasn't just of Emily and me, it was of someone else. A figure, shadowy and indistinct, standing behind her in the mirror, even though there was no one there in reality. Emily screamed, spinning around, but the figure wasn't behind her, only in the glass. Its eyes, I couldn't see clearly, but the way it stared at her, at us, sent ice straight through my veins. Then it moved, slowly, deliberately, reaching out as if the glass was nothing, as if it could step into our world. And with that, I realized the worst part. Whatever this was, it wasn't limited to shadows or whispers. It had found a way to bridge the space between us and it had chosen tonight. Emily grabbed my hand, trembling. We shouldn't be here, she whispered. And in that instant, I understood. We had already crossed a line we might never come back from. The figure in the mirror didn't blink, didn't hesitate. It simply watched, and the air around us seemed to thrum with a tension I could feel in my bones. Emily clutched my hand like a lifeline, and I realized we had no choice. We couldn't run. Whatever this was, it had come for us, and the only option was to face it. I stepped closer to the mirror, trying to steady my shaking hands. Who are you? I demanded, my voice louder than I intended, echoing in the room. The shadow didn't answer. Instead, it leaned forward slightly, tilting its head in a way that was disturbingly human. Emily whispered, trembling. It knows us, it knows me. I looked at her, alarm flashing. What do you mean? Her voice was barely audible. I've seen it before. In dreams. I thought it was just nightmares, but it's real. It's been following me. The air grew colder, the shadows stretching toward us as if trying to pull us in. I felt a tug in my chest, like invisible hands gripping me, and Emily screamed. The mirror rippled, like water, and then the shadow moved. This time, stepping out of the mirror and into the room. It wasn't a person, not fully. Its form shifted constantly, half light, half darkness, and its eyes, empty yet burning. I felt a pull toward it, a compulsion I couldn't resist, but I forced myself to step back. Emily's grip on my arm was the only anchor keeping me from being dragged into its space. Then, suddenly, she spoke a name I didn't recognize at first. And the figure froze. Its movement stuttered, and a low, guttural sound escaped it. I'm not afraid of you, she said, voice trembling but firm. And in a blink, the shadow shrieked, dissolving into the air like smoke, leaving the mirror empty, still, normal. We sank to the floor, trembling, hearts pounding, unsure if we had won or just survived a moment of mercy. And just as relief started to wash over us, the mirror flickered one last time. Just enough for me to see another shadow, smaller, standing behind Emily in the reflection, smiling. And then the lights went out. The lights flickered back on slowly, casting a warm, golden glow across the room. Emily and I stayed huddled on the floor for a moment, hearts still hammering, bodies trembling, trying to convince ourselves the terror was truly over. The apartment looked normal again. The mirror reflected only us, empty corners, and the faint glow of the streetlights outside. I don't understand, I whispered. What was that? Emily shook her head, still holding my hand. I don't know, she admitted. But I think it was tied to me, to my fear, to the part of me I've been running from. She paused, tears slipping down her cheeks. I've tried to be strong all the time, for everyone else. But sometimes, even the strongest parts of us need someone to stay. I squeezed her hand, realizing in that moment that staying had been more than a choice. It had been necessary. Not just for her, but for both of us. Fear has a way of isolating you, of making you feel small and invisible. And tonight, the only way to fight it was together. We sat there for a long time, letting the calm seep back slowly, savoring the simple relief of being safe, or as safe as we could be. The terror hadn't vanished completely. It lingered like a shadow on the edge of your vision, but it felt manageable now, like something we had survived, not something that controlled us. Finally, Emily looked at me and smiled weakly. Thank you, she said, for staying, for not letting me face it alone. I smiled back, a warmth spreading through me I hadn't expected. You wouldn't have been alone, I said. Not tonight. Not ever. We helped each other to our feet and moved to the living room. The candle had burned down. The room smelled faintly of wax and tea, and for the first time that night, it felt like home again. There was still a part of both of us that shivered at the memory of what had happened, but there was also a sense of understanding, of trust, of connection, and of something stronger than fear. As we finally settled onto the couch, the mirror caught the light one last time. For a brief second, I thought I saw a shadow, just at the edge, before it vanished completely. I didn't speak. Emily didn't either. We didn't need to. Some things don't need explanation. They just need to be faced, together. And as I watched her finally relax, finally let go of the tension that had gripped her all night, I realized that the scariest moments aren't always about what's out there in the dark. Sometimes, they're about what's inside us. And sometimes, the greatest courage is simply staying when you're afraid. Tonight, we stayed. And somehow that was enough. The night was quiet now, almost peaceful. But deep down, I knew